All right, so Donald Trump seized a Venezuelan oil tanker. And why, you ask? Good question. On first glance, it seems like an act Trump is doing simply because he can. Like when I used to hide Bill O'Reilly's teeth in Geraldo's soup. But apparently the ship wasn't just carrying Venezuelan oil. Pam Bondi says the government executed a seizure warrant on the tanker because it had been used to transport illegal oil from Venezuela and Iran in support of foreign terrorist organizations. So Trump seized it. And suddenly the media wakes up and shouts, "Can he really do that?" Well, he did. Now go back to sleep, bitches. Because unlike the last guy, Trump actually gives a damn, when all Joe Biden gave were stool samples. So is this just about using oil to fund terror, or is there more to this? Well, remember, back in 2024, it was reported that over 100 Tren de Aragua crimes, like sex trafficking and shootings in the U.S., were tied to gaps in vetting of Venezuelans who were coming to our shores. And when asked to do so, the Maduro regime refused repatriation requests, which stranded criminals in the United States. So while we were getting overrun with bad hombres, Maduro left us hanging, which may be why Trump's tightening the noose around him. But you could argue Trump wouldn't be seizing tankers and trying to clean foreign gangs out of our cities if the Biden White House hadn't let in 10 million illegals for reasons nobody has even bothered to explain. The Bidenistas had no interest in deporting anyone. None. Zero. Not warlords, not murderers, not even people who like soccer. Well, guess what? Two can play at that game, so Trump just sent a few Americans over to Venezuela. But instead of taking their housing and cash assistance, we took a tanker. A tanker that apparently was up to no good, which prompts the question, how do you say around and find out in Spanish? I should probably know the answer. I have a feeling that's what my maid Juanita is always telling me. Now, clearly, it's on in Venezuela. Trump's had enough. I haven't seen him this pissed since he found a Band-Aid in his taco bowl. The administration is pulling out all the stops after the Biden White House acted like Rosie's gynecologist and looked the other way. Dems were AWOL on drugs and illegals. Actually, they weren't AWOL. They were actively helping the problem grow. They paused deportations. They killed the wall. They suspended Remain in Mexico. And then when Trump acts, the Dems suddenly scream about process. That somehow arguing about how something is done is supposed to make us forget what wasn't done at all. Me and my wife have this same fight every time I load the dishwasher. You know, at least I loaded it. True, maybe I shouldn't mix glassware with underwear, but they all get clean. So now Trump comes in swinging a sledgehammer the size of one of Hillary's ankles, and the Dems are shocked and surprised. Well, why is he being so extreme? Because he was given an extreme problem courtesy of you, Dems. Trump is like Daniel Penny, when in that subway car, he stopped a clear and present danger to his fellow Americans. The outcome, without context, might look severe, but not until you see the whole picture. And the whole picture? After 10 million illegals, tidal waves of drugs, human trafficking, do we really need to paint it for you? Look, Trump knows he's got 3 years to fix the atrocious policies of the Biden era. Open borders, no deportations, record drug overdoses, fearless gangs, rampant fraud. It really was quite the mess. So don't blame him for doing his best to clean it up. So tonight I want to introduce you to Kentucky Democratic State Rep Sarah Stalker. And if ever a stalker needed a restraining order, it's this loathsome ass. This week during an education committee meeting, officials were presented a bill to end DEI programs in K through 12 schools in Kentucky, which means we can only hope that Sarah is honest about not feeling good about being white every day.
I'm going to be honest. I don't feel good about being white every day for a lot of reasons. Because it's a point of privilege that I get to move through the world in a way that so many of my other colleagues and friends and family members of the community don't get the privilege to do. And I'm just a female, but just a woman, just a white woman.
Don't sell yourself short, Sarah. You're not just a white woman. You're also annoying. But could you imagine if she were a white man?
If I was a white man, I would be functioning from a point of an even greater privilege. I think we're missing an opportunity when kids have a moment to reflect about how the color of their skin does and does not allow them to move through the world. Running to them and trying to stifle that and trying to say you shouldn't feel bad, so we don't want to ever expose you to something that is going to make you have to pause and have maybe some internal feelings. It's a missed opportunity for some really good dialogue.
Yeah, forget learning to read. Do that. So like Rosie O'Donnell's hamper full of jock straps, there's a lot to unpack here, and it all stinks. She says if she were a white man, she'd have even greater privilege. Right. Try being picked last for basketball almost every weekend in Harlem. But then picked first when you have to buy the team pizza. But it would be a mistake to engage in a who's more privileged game, because that's for losers. Quite literally, achievers of any race or gender know that they're individuals and not groups. But when you start making these blanket statements about whiteness, you might as well swap that blanket for a white sheet, because you're just as race-obsessed as the Klan. Imagine being so enlightened that you look at a classroom full of 6-year-olds who still believe in Santa and the Tooth Fairy, and you want to tell them that Santa prefers white kids' houses over black ones, and the Tooth Fairy gets beaten regularly because she's probably trans. They say they're protecting kids, but they're as protective as a creep outside a playground in a white van. At least with that guy, you know what you're getting, a choice of Kit Kat or Snickers. Usually Snickers. But at this age, kids are sponges. You can indoctrinate them into anything. Give me a classroom full of 6-year-olds, and in a week, I'll have them believing Kilmeade is talented. Though, they'll still ask if he's written any books at a higher reading level. You tell them your race is bad, and they'll believe that too. It's not education, it's brainwash. Now, you can assume Stalker is just another affluent, white, female liberal who fetishizes her guilt. She acts like she's confronting the horror of her privilege. But her confrontation has no cost to her, or she'd get the hell out of the way and let a black person do her job. And this desperate striving for approval speaks to a neediness that transmits misery. A healthy adult passes on the things that make them truly fulfilled to children. And that's service, gratitude, generosity, persistence, dependability. Instead, here's a broad telling kids to feel bad about themselves because she claims to feel bad about herself because she's white. No, she's a liar. She doesn't feel bad about being white. She feels like a savior, telling the black folk that she's not like them other white rubes and that she soaks in her own self-admiration. She's just trying to build herself up by virtue signaling while making children feel really bad. She's like the opposite of Mr. Rogers, because really, who would want to be her neighbor? There is nothing in my mind more harmful than a white savior. Jesus Christ accepted.
Yeah, I was gonna make that exception, but this woman perfectly illustrates the horribleness of DEI, that teaching it and preaching it is about dividing people into groups and creating oppressive guilt. So what she wants is for them to go into elementary schools or to schools and tell white kids that they are awful because of how they plopped out of the birth canal. Mm-hmm. I mean, she ought to volunteer for being a monitor in the delivery room, and she can go, shame, 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 to all the white babies. Except babies are really purple when they're born.
Yeah,
you really don't know.
But when you slap the baby on the butt, you can also be slapping them extra hard if they're white.
Right. And she's got the privilege thing wrong, because in terms of climate change and jeopardizing Mother Earth, women are much worse. White women are much worse than white men just because of the volume of paper products and water that we use.
Yes.
Just, you know, toilet paper and tampons. We are earth crushers.
I never thought of that. Newsom has a trans godson.
Paradox, bring it on. Contradictions, bring it on. Contradictions, but that I think I can explain, perhaps. Evolutions, we didn't get into trans sports. That's an issue no one wants to hear about because 80% of the people listening disagree with my position on this. But it comes from my heart, not just my head. It wasn't a political evolution.
Your position being that
I don't think it's I want to see trans kids. I have a trans godson. There's no governor that's signed more pro-trans legislation than I have, and no one has been a stronger advocate for the LGBTQ community. But you have to accommodate the reality of those whose rights are being taken away as we advance the rights of the trans community.
So Dagan, I have no idea what he just said.
No.
But he did bring up his transgender godson, and you're thinking, oh, it's a little kid. You know, it's Nats Getty, a 33-year-old designer, model, activist, great-grandchild of the oil tycoon J. Paul Getty.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so shocked he's trans. It always happens, you know, to celebrities. They have the highest incidence of this going on. Does that... And then he goes into this other thing, and what was he saying?
I don't know, and I don't care, but here's the backstory. This pompadour of pomposity got in early with the Getty family.
Yeah.
So years ago, he would have access to the money, power, and, you know, fortune and influence, so he would have a political career. And no family has done more harm to the earth for money that was then shot in their arms or snorted up their noses than this family. And I'm not overstating the myriad drug problems that this family has had. But this person is famous, this godchild, who was married to another trans person. And it is so normalized by the media that this trans person was married to a female trans person, and they were trying to have a kid through IVF. But People magazine wrote about it as if they weren't trans people, as if one of them still had her uterus and the other one still had his penis.
Yeah.
But they were dressing as different sexes. Am I confusing you? Because it is confusing.
It's like a biological Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Is that the right movie?
Let's go with that.
Yeah, all right. Yes. Kat, did you get any wisdom from that?
I actually understood completely what he was saying, which is what irritated me, because he was actually saying something that's, I would say, pretty reasonable and average and the view of many people, but he was saying it as if he was uniquely special for having this view. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe what he was saying is he doesn't believe that biological men should play in women's sports, but he also doesn't hate his trans godson. And he was saying it as if, you may think I'm crazy. I know a lot of people are going to have a problem with this. But I don't think that biological men should be in women's sports, and I don't hate trans people. I think that's a common position. I think it's actually most people's position.
If he had said that...
I think it's most people's position.
Yes, exactly.
People who have had, myself included, people who have had issues with, there are differences in biological sexes that give you unfair advantages in sports, and study after study backs this up. That doesn't equal that you hate trans people. And he was presenting it as if he was a front, like leading this issue, like as a pioneer on the frontier, the first one, like, and I know I'm getting a lot of pushback on this. It's like, no. And it's something so disingenuous about it, which is just so wild to see a politician be disingenuous.
Yes.
That's, I believe what he was saying was just the average American's position.
Is she making sense, Tyrus? It makes...
Oh, crystal clear.
Yeah.
Absolutely crystal clear.